A warm glow spilled through the tall windows of the modern office tower, lighting up crisp white desks arrayed in neat rows. The hum of computers and low chatter of colleagues filled the air with a steady rhythm. In this space, deadlines were targets to hit, pitches were battles to win, and innovation was the currency everyone chased. Simone Carter moved among her teammates with the easy confidence of someone at home. She paused at a cluster of monitors where data trends danced in colorful graphs, offered a quick suggestion to smooth out a chart, then drifted onward. To the rest of the staff, she was simply Simone, the talented strategist whose ideas had lifted campaigns and whose calm presence soothed frantic days. Everyone respected her. Everyone trusted her. Everyone played by her rules, except for one person. Marcus Ellison leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers as he surveyed the open office before him. His new title, department manager, felt heavy on his shoulders, but he relished the power that came with it. He believed in order. He believed in results. He believed in making himself heard and setting firm lines. Under his guidance, he told himself this team would reach heights it had only hinted at before. He cared little for small talk or idle chatter. To Marcus, life was a series of objectives, each to be conquered with efficiency. When he noticed someone slipping behind schedule, or worse, showing signs of indecision, he pounced. No ifs, no buts. He had little patience for excuses. Simone had arrived late to the office twice in the span of 1 week. In her quiet way, she had explained that a family emergency had kept her from the subway's early train. She had thanked Marcus when he let go of her handoff timing and assured him she would stay late to fill any gaps. Yet Marcus saw only 2 tardy clock-ins on his tablet. To him, that signaled a lack of commitment. "If you want to be part of this team," he said, voice cold over the phone, "you need to show up on time, every time." Simone's thoughtful reply, made in her soft tone, failed to register. He hung up, convinced her lateness was deliberate. Most days, the open-floor office felt like a bustling crossroads where ideas collided. Whiteboards lined the walls, scribbled with slogans and arrows tracking the path from concept to launch. Glass conference rooms held smaller gatherings where teams huddled over laptops and jotted notes on notepads. The atmosphere thrummed with ambition. People swapped anecdotes about weekend getaways and favorite brunch spots, weaving camaraderie into the fabric of deadlines and deliverables. Simone often joined these light conversations, her laughter genuine and her interest sincere. Yet she also kept a little distance, a private circle that none walked inside. Some whispered that she was a workaholic. Others thought she might be hiding something deeper. The truth was more complex. Simone Carter was not just a strategist. She was the CEO of this company. She had chosen to step down, at least temporarily, into a junior role so she could watch how teams functioned without the walls of hierarchy filtering every interaction. She had worked hard to cultivate an identity that would allow her to blend in, a different hairstyle, subtler attire, a less commanding posture. She wanted to see real behaviors, how managers treated employees, how teams collaborated under pressure, how bias might sneak in undetected. She created the avatar of Simone, the black woman in a middle management position, listening, observing, advising, but not revealing. She moved among her own employees as though she were simply one of them, trusting that agility of mind and skill of execution would keep her safe from unwanted attention. Marcus, in his manager's corner office, rarely glimpsed beyond the persona she presented. He saw her turn in reports early, draft campaign proposals that ranked among the best in recent memory, and field client calls with a steady hand when crisis threatened. But when she arrived 10 minutes late on those 2 mornings, he dropped his blinders over everything else she had done. He drafted a scathing email in his head, a reprimand. He imagined a stern conversation, a show of his teeth, so other team members knew he would not tolerate exceptions. He refused to question why. He operated on principle. Rules applied to everyone. Anyone who bent them would break them. In his mind, Simone had bent them. Meanwhile, Simone's mornings began with concern for her mother, whose health dipped unexpectedly. She checked in on her with a call to the hospital, staying on the line until the nurse assured her everything was stable. She then sprinted toward the train, hoping to catch the rush hour crowds before they became a bottleneck. She answered quick emails on her phone as she walked. When she reached her desk, she took a breath, tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, and greeted her neighbors with a gracious smile. Her eyes carried the warmth and openness that colleagues adored. She did not mention the early morning worry. Instead, she dove into her tasks, her efficiency shining. That Monday, Marcus decided enough was enough. He tapped out a message to HR, outlining his intent to speak with Simone about performance issues. He vowed to himself that she would understand what was expected. He pictured a meeting where he would lay down the law. As soon as the clock struck 3, he would summon her. He polished his remarks until they were sharp, concise, and impossible to misconstrue. He took no note of how her deliverables had saved a client presentation the week before, nor of how her ideas had sparked fresh enthusiasm in the team. To Marcus, an employee who arrived late twice was an employee who could not be trusted. In the open office, cooler heads whispered worries about Marcus's approach. They exchanged stories of his insistence on perfection, of emails marked urgent that carried threats of consequences. Yet no one dared speak up too loudly. They all depended on Marcus's approval for raises and promotions. Some tried to shield Simone, sending off quick messages of support after she left a meeting looking tense. Others simply watched, curious, to see how the drama would unfold. Did Marcus have the guts to challenge someone as respected as Simone? Could he fire her without backlash? Even those who were close to Simone suspected she might struggle to defend herself when Marcus unloaded his fury. On the morning of the meeting, the office looked brighter than usual. Sunlight pooled across the polished floor, and the hum of printers and keyboards had a quiet optimism. Colleagues leaned into their work, forging new paths toward deadlines that loomed. Simone checked her watch. It was nearly 3. She gathered her notes for the client review she was to lead the next day, reviewing bullet points on budget adjustments and market research. She felt calm, confident in her preparation. She had done this countless times. If Marcus wanted a discussion, she would hear him out politely, explain her circumstances, and move forward. No one suspected she was someone higher up the ladder. No one thought to question why the CEO would ever be late, or even present herself as a strategist. She had woven her cover well, mastering the small details that kept her identity hidden. She referred to her supervisor as Mr. Ellison, and never let slip a hint of authority. She took notes when he spoke. She answered when he asked questions. She fit the mold of a diligent employee. Underneath it all, she carried a private awareness of her own power. She knew what the outcome would be, but she also knew the stakes were higher than most realized. She needed to see the team's culture laid bare. When Marcus's message arrived, urgent, direct, demanding she come to his office, Simone did not flinch. She smiled at the teammate nearby, excused herself, and walked down the hall. In her mind, she mapped out how she would handle the conversation: respectful, honest, unflappable. She reached Marcus's door, knocked once, then entered. The glass. Panels on each side of the door revealed a side of the office that nobody else could see. From here, Marcus's eyes could scan the entire open floor. If this went badly, she thought, everyone would notice. She drew a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and closed the door behind her. The lights flickered briefly, and the steady hum of the office felt miles away. At that moment, the stage was set. 2 people would enter this room. One would speak, from a place of unquestioned authority. The other would listen, prepared to stand firm on her own merit. Beyond the door, screens glowed and papers rustled. Somewhere out in the open floor, a printer lurched into motion. Unseen, the files in HR's system awaited Marcus's final click. Simone had no idea how quickly the meeting would spiral, nor how a simple misunderstanding would trigger a chain of events that neither of them could anticipate. Yet here she stood, composed and focused, unaware that this simple step across the threshold would thrust her deepest secret into the light. The office seemed suddenly quiet. Her heartbeat rose, but her face remained serene. She was, after all, just another employee, at least for now. Marcus tapped his pen against the polished wood of his desk, the soft clicking echoing through the stillness of his office. He stared down at the schedule on his tablet, his jaw tightening as he scrolled through Simone's attendance record. 2 late arrivals in 7 days. For someone who prided herself on excellence, this was unacceptable. He prided himself, too, on running a tight ship. Rules were rules. To him, lateness meant a lack of respect, a crack in the foundation of trust. That kept the whole team strong. Earlier that week, Simone had sent a polite note explaining the delays. Her mother, she had said, was recovering from a minor procedure, and the timing of her train connections had forced her to come in later than usual. Simone assured him she would make up the hours after lunch. Marcus had read the email in his office, flicked through the attached documents that showed she had indeed completed her morning tasks remotely, and still, he had felt a flicker of annoyance. He did not like excuses. He did not like exceptions. He believed that if someone wanted to be a part of his team, they showed up on time every time. He remembered the moment 2 days ago when he had stood at the doorway of the conference room. The weekly team meeting had just begun. Slides projected across a wide screen showed client data, deadlines, and budget forecasts. Simone, usually, the calm voice that steered the discussion, had slipped into the seat a good 5 minutes after the start. His eyes had narrowed as she offered a soft apology. The room had paused. A chart flickered. A colleague had hesitated in mid-sentence, unsure whether to continue without her. In that instant, Marcus made a decision. No one would think tardiness acceptable on his watch. That afternoon, he cleared his throat and said, "Let's get back on track." He moved the discussion forward briskly, but he kept a watchful eye on Simone. He noticed the crease between her eyebrows as she scribbled notes. He noticed the way she shifted her chair to face him. He noticed nothing she did felt genuine. He felt he needed to send a message. It wasn't personal, it was principle. Yet in the days that followed, a strange tension settled over the team. Simone continued to deliver stellar work. She turned in reports early, crafted compelling presentations, and fielded client calls as though she had been born to the role. When Marcus reviewed her files, he saw that her client satisfaction scores were among the highest in the department. Colleagues whispered praise for her clear thinking and her patience under pressure. But Marcus chose to focus only on the tardiness. To him, 2 late arrivals outweighed every other achievement. Rules were black and white. He had no interest in shades of gray. Meanwhile, Simone carried on with her duties without fanfare. She greeted co-workers in the morning with a gentle nod, and when the late train had left her behind again, she simply apologized and got to work. She never raised her voice. She never complained. She never blamed anyone. Inside, her heart tugged, with worry for her mother, but she kept that fear locked away. She did not want to burden Marcus or the team with her personal struggles. She believed that work and private life must stay separate. She believed in taking responsibility for both. On the Wednesday before the big meeting, an email landed in Simone's inbox from HR. It had the subject line, "Upcoming Performance Discussion." Simone paused before opening it. Her pulse quickened. Performance discussions usually meant praise or correction, but usually they were routine. She clicked it open and read that she was to meet with her manager the following Monday at 3 in his office. She would receive feedback on her work and discuss any areas for improvement. She felt a small lift of hope. She had prepared her reports early, she thought, and she would show him that her work stood on its own merits. Later that day, she mentioned the meeting to a teammate quietly, between the hum of printers and the clatter of keyboards. "Just to check in," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Routine." Her friend nodded but gave her a concerned look. "You okay with that?" she asked. Simone offered a warm smile. "Absolutely. I welcome feedback." The colleague hesitated, because most people did not welcome feedback, especially from Marcus. But Simone was different. She truly believed every conversation was an opportunity. Marcus sat in his office later that afternoon, drafting what he saw as necessary talking points. He opened a fresh document and titled it Performance Concerns, Simone Carter. He listed bullet points: lateness, need for consistency, expectation of punctuality. Then he stared at the screen and realized he had nothing else to add. Not a single note about her work quality, her creative ideas, or her handling of difficult clients. He felt a brief flicker of doubt. He thought about the praise Simone had received from others. He thought about his own standards. He asked himself silently, "Is this fair?" But the question felt unnecessary. He reminded himself of the team's need for order. He closed the document, convinced he had the authority to address the matter as he saw fit. The day before the meeting, the office buzzed with activity. A major client had just signed off on a new campaign. A celebration lunch was planned in the break room. People popped their heads out of cubicles, laughing about the upcoming weekend's plans. Simone joined the gathering, her eyes bright as she poured herself a cup of coffee. Someone raised a toast to the team's success, and chairs scraped the floor as they moved closer in a circle. Simone clapped along, her laughter mixing with the others. For a moment, the worry about the upcoming meeting vanished. She felt at home among these colleagues, unaware that beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. That night, she stayed, late in the office, reviewing slides and rehearsing her presentation for the next day's client call. The lights were dimmed, and the monitors cast a soft glow across the empty desks. Simone's reflection stared back at her as she clicked through the deck, fine-tuning bullet points on budget forecasts and market trends. She added notes in the margins, reminders of key points to emphasize. When she finally saved her work, she stretched, feeling the tight pull in her shoulders. Before she left, she checked her phone again for updates on her mother. A brief text from the hospital said that her mother had slept through the evening peacefully. Relief washed over Simone. She packed her bag, shut down her computer, and headed home, ready to face the next day. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. Simone stepped onto the platform just as the first train rolled in. She tapped her card, found a seat, and pulled out her notes. She sipped her coffee, her mind rehearsing welcoming phrases for the client call. Yet the thought of her meeting with Marcus lingered at the back of her mind. She reminded herself to stay calm, to listen closely, and to respond with clarity. She would show him that while life might throw challenges her way, she would always rise to meet them. When she reached the office, the floor felt unexpectedly quiet. The usual chatter was muted, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Simone scanned the rows of desks. Some screens were still dark. Others had faces glued to spreadsheets. She offered gentle greetings as she passed by, but the smiles she received felt tentative. She tucked away her apprehension and made her way toward her desk. Her phone buzzed with a message from HR. "Please arrive at Marcus's office 5 minutes early." Simone tapped out a quick acknowledgement. She inhaled deeply and stood up, smoothing her skirt. The hallway to Marcus's office felt longer than usual. The carpet muffled her footsteps. She rehearsed her opening line, something about being grateful for feedback and ready to improve. She knocked lightly on the doorframe. Marcus looked up from his desk, his face unreadable behind a pair of thin-rimmed glasses. He gestured to the chair opposite him. Simone sat, placed her folder on her lap, and tilted her head slightly, waiting for him to speak. The room seemed warmer than she remembered, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Marcus cleared his throat. He leaned forward, hands folded on the desk. He spoke in a low, even tone. He pointed to the attendance records displayed on his laptop screen. He told Simone that her 2 late arrivals violated company policy. He told her that punctuality was non-negotiable. He told her that the team deserved reliability and that exceptions could not be tolerated. Simone listened intently, her heart steady. When he paused, she opened her folder and handed him printouts showing her remote logins, her completed tasks, the emails she had sent from the train. She explained in calm, measured words that she had made up the hours, that client work had never been affected, and that her family emergency had been unavoidable. Marcus glanced at the documents, then looked back at her. His expression remained firm. He repeated that rules applied to everyone. He repeated that lateness undermined trust. He said he had made his decision. Simone felt a chill, but she held her ground. She asked if he would consider a warning rather than more severe action. She offered to attend a coaching session on time management. She assured him she valued the team more than anything. She waited, her palms flat on her skirt, her back straight. Marcus stared at the table for a moment, as though weighing every word he would say next. Then with a single nod he delivered the blow. He said, "I'm sorry, Simone, but I have to let you go." Simone's breath caught. The chair felt too hard against her. The room spun slightly, yet she remained composed. She reached for her folder, closed it gently, and stood. Marcus sat at his desk, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the polished wood. He tapped his pen against the laptop's edge, eyes flicking between the clock in the corner of the screen and the folders he had pulled together for this meeting. Each folder bore Simone's name, neat typeface on their tabs, attendance records, performance metrics, project deliverables. He had organized them meticulously, as though presentation could lend extra weight to his argument. He told himself this was about fairness, about upholding standards. He did not consider how small those standards might be compared to the wealth of contributions Simone had made. At precisely 3 o'clock, the chime of his computer's clock sounded. He closed the spreadsheet he'd been studying and leaned back. He had rehearsed his words, clear, firm, final. No room for debate, no softness in his tone. He would speak, Simone would answer if she chose, and then the outcome would be decided. His forehead creased when he remembered the earlier team meetings, where she had shone, her calm voice guiding the discussion, her data insights resolving deadlocks. But he dismissed those moments. What mattered now was her lateness. Rules were rules. Simone paused outside his office, folder tucked under her arm, and straightened the collar of her blouse. For a moment she considered taking a breath, closing her eyes, reminding herself that she had done everything right. She had documented her remote sign-ins. She had completed tasks ahead of schedule. She had kept her team on track even when personal worries tugged at her attention. Still, she felt the familiar knot of nerves tighten in her stomach. She knocked softly on the glass panel of his door, as though afraid a louder rap might shatter the calm she wanted to project. "Come in," Marcus called, not looking up from a report he was marking. Simone opened the door quietly and stepped inside. Marcus's office felt smaller than his open-plan corner cubicle. Here walls were solid, shelves heavy with binders, and the only view looked out at a distant row of cubicles she rarely passed. She brushed a strand of hair back, closed the gap to his desk, and settled into the chair he indicated. Her back was straight, her hands folded on the folder in her lap. She gave him a polite nod. Marcus cleared his throat. He slid a printed record across the desk. Simone recognized the familiar grid of dates and times, her own clock-in sheet. His finger tapped the lines marked late. "Your attendance record shows 2 late arrivals in the last week," he said. His tone was level but firm. "Company policy is clear. We require punctuality." Simone looked at the sheet, then back at him. She chose her words with care. "I understand," she said softly. "My mother was in the hospital after a minor procedure. I had to make sure everything was okay before I left. I logged in remotely each morning, and I stayed late to complete all my tasks." Marcus folded his arms. "Policy doesn't allow exceptions, Simone. Every member of this team needs to be here on time. It sets the tone." He tapped another folder. "Your deliverables are strong. Your reports are thorough. But that does not excuse the tardiness." He gave a small, tight nod. "We can't build a culture where rules are bent." Simone took a breath. Never raise her voice, always speak calmly. "I appreciate the importance of punctuality," she responded. "That's why I volunteered to make up the hours after lunch. Nothing was left undone. My team wasn't affected." She opened her folder and slid her own documents toward him. Screenshots of remote logins, email timestamps, notes from client calls she had covered in the mornings. "These show that the work was done," she said. "I respect our policies. I do not expect special treatment, only fair review." Marcus picked up her printouts, flipped through the pages, then set them aside without a word. Simone's throat felt dry, but she held onto her composure. She asked, "Would you consider a warning instead of disciplinary action? I'm fully committed to this team." She met his gaze. Her eyes were steady. She offered a small, sincere smile. "I want to grow here. I want to be part of the solution." Marcus leaned back and exhaled. She saw the moment of calculation in his eyes, the fraction of a second where doubt might have entered his mind. But then he closed that door. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I can't overlook this. I have to follow through." He stood, sliding his chair back. He reached for his phone, tapped the HR directory, and spoke the words Simone had dreaded. "Yes, please start the termination process for Simone Carter. It's for repeated lateness." Simone's heart stuttered. She felt a wave of heat rush to her cheeks. She opened her mouth, ready to object, to plead her case once more. But she remembered the rules she had set for herself. She would not beg. She would not plead guilt. She would not lose her poise. So she closed her folder gently, folded her, hands in her lap, and replied with quiet dignity, "Thank you for letting me know." Without anger, without bitterness, she rose from the chair. Her eyes met Marcus's for one brief second. In that moment, she saw his conviction, his belief that he had done the right thing. She also saw a flicker of uncertainty, the faintest crease of regret around his mouth. Simone's own expression softened. She wanted him to know she bore no ill will. She said, "I've valued my time here." Then she turned and walked to the door, leaving the office nearly as silent as she had found it. Back in the corridor, the usual hum of activity seemed distant. Colleagues passed in crystalline silence. Their eyes flicked up, catching hers, registering shock, sympathy, confusion. Simone kept her gaze forward, her steps measured. Each footfall echoed faintly on the carpeted floor. She reached her desk, gathered her personal items into a small tote bag, her favorite mug, a few pens, a little plant her sister had given her. She paused for a moment, looking around at the team's workspace, at the bright monitors displaying half-finished projects, at the sticky notes that chronicled the group's efforts. She felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of clarity. This episode would end, yet the work she cared about would continue with or without her. As she crossed the threshold of the open office, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations paused. Heads turned. A hush fell over the room, so complete it felt like the office had been paused on someone's tap. Simone walked slowly toward the door, each step commanding silent respect. She gathered the few items she had at her station, placed them in her toiku, and turned to face her team. She gave them a small, encouraging nod. In her eyes was an unspoken message. "Keep going. You can do this." One by one, her colleagues resumed their tasks, but she saw in their faces the questions. Had Marcus really fired her over 2 latenesses? Would the company lose someone so skilled and respected? Whispers spread like wildfire. What will happen now? Who will lead our next client call? Does HR really allow this? Simone shouldered her bag and reached the glass front doors of the office. She placed a hand on the handle, glanced back once more at the desks and chairs and lights that had been her second home. Then she stepped out into the elevator lobby. The doors closed behind her with a soft whir. The elevator descended, carrying her past floors she did not know by number. She pressed the lobby button, then watched the numbers tick down. Each floor reminded her of the layers of hierarchy in a company, the middle managers, the directors, the vice presidents. She wondered how many doors she would have to open now outside this building to find a place to apply her talents. She reminded herself that doors close so that new ones can open. When the doors opened to the first floor, she walked into the lobby past the security desk where the guard gave her a confused glance. She showed her badge, handed it over, and the guard returned it with a polite nod. Simone stepped outside, into the cool afternoon air. The city's hustle swirled around her, people on sidewalks, cars honking, the distant rumble of trains. She breathed in deeply. It felt good to be under an open sky again. She imagined calling her mother, sharing news that might turn her worry into relief, telling her that everything would be all right. Then she would sit down, consider her next move, and begin again. Behind her, through the tinted glass of the lobby doors, Marcus watched her depart. He felt a lump in his throat that he could not explain. He told himself it was nothing more than regret over a tough decision. He would move on. He would find someone else. Yet for the first time, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He looked at the folders on his desk, the attendance record, the policy guide, and wondered if rules really were more important than people. But the thought passed quickly. He had a team to run and standards to keep. He turned away and started drafting an email to HR to confirm her departure. Outside, Simone hailed a cab and headed toward the riverbank. She thought about how the current would carry small leaves downstream, how obstacles in the water would only change the flow, not stop it. She felt that she too would move forward. She would find a new course. The wind lifted her hair, carrying with it the sense that endings can give rise to beginnings. And as the city whirred around her, Carter closed one chapter and prepared to write the next. The next morning began like any other. Early light filtered through the blinds, painting thin stripes of gold across the carpet. In the break room, a few early risers nursed cups of hot coffee, blinking sleep from their eyes. The hum of the coffee machine and the hiss of the kettle were familiar comforts, yet something felt different. A quiet tension seemed to hang in the air, though no one could yet name its source. Simone Carter's phone buzzed on her kitchen counter, rousing her from the edge of a dream. Blinking, she reached for it and saw a string of messages from her assistant. "Did you see the all-staff email? Please call me." Simone's heart jumped. She tapped the screen and opened the company email, her eyes scanning the bold subject line. "Important update from the CEO." Her breath quickened. She felt her pulse in her ears as she read the first lines. "Dear team, it has come to my attention that yesterday, Simone Carter was wrongfully terminated by her department manager, Marcus Ellison, based on a misunderstanding of company policy and without a fair review of her performance. I apologize for any confusion or distress this may have caused. Effective immediately, Simone Carter is reinstated to her position, and Marcus Ellison is suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct." The text seemed to blur on the screen. Simone read and reread the words. She closed her eyes, took a steadying breath, and let a small, private smile play at the corners of her mouth. She felt a rush of relief, pride, and vindication all at once. She tapped her assistant, typing back, "On my way." By the time she stepped into the lobby of the office tower, the usual bustle had already begun. Elevator doors opened and closed, carrying groups of employees up and down the building. Simone walked in through the revolving doors and paused at the security desk. The guard handed back her badge with a raised eyebrow. "Big news this morning," he said quietly. Simone simply nodded, slipping the badge into her pocket. As she stepped onto the floor, a hush fell over the hushed murmurs rippled through the open office. Clusters of people gathered around their desks, phones in hand, reading the same email she had received at home. She heard snippets of conversation. "I can't believe he fired her over 2 late arrivals. Did you see that he's suspended? I always thought she was more than just a strategist." Faces turned toward her desk and she caught people giving her encouraging smiles, thumbs up, even a few discreet pats on the shoulder. Simone moved through the rows of desks, her expression calm and gracious. She offered soft good mornings that felt almost too understated for the moment. People stopped their work to congratulate her, but she waved them on with a gentle hand, wanting to reach Marcus's office first. The path felt strangely quiet, though the buzz of conversation did not entirely fade away. It was more like the moment before a wave breaks on the shore. She reached the glass doors of the CEO's suite, doors that in her undercover weeks she had never approached. She took a deep breath and touched the card reader. The panel glowed green and the doors slid open. Inside, her true office felt both familiar and surreal. She walked down the corridor lined with framed photos of company milestones. The first office, the first major campaign launch, the team's first award. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor. At the end of the hall, a small group had already gathered. HR, a couple of vice presidents, and to her right, the conference room. Door labeled All Hands Meeting. She withdrew her company ID and flashed it to the senior HR manager, who stepped aside with a nod. She paused at the threshold of the conference room and saw nearly every employee in the department. They sat in neat rows of chairs facing a raised podium at the front. A large screen behind the podium displayed the company logo and the title, Town Hall Leadership, Respect, and Inclusion. Simone stepped forward, greeted by enthusiastic applause that began low and rose in volume. She waved her hand, smiling. The sound washed over her like a tide. She walked to the podium and tapped the microphone. A hush fell. In that moment, she felt her heart steady. She glanced at the screen, then looked out at the faces before her. People she had worked alongside, people whose trust she valued. She felt the weight of her role, the responsibility she held, and the lessons the moment would teach. Good morning, she began, her voice clear and steady. Thank you all for being here on such short notice. I know there's been a lot of talk this morning, and I want to address it directly. Yesterday I was mistakenly terminated by my own manager for a misunderstanding of our attendance policy. A ripple of gasps and murmurs moved across the room. I want you to know that I am reinstated and that Marcus Ellison has been suspended, pending a full review of his actions. She paused to let it sink in. But this isn't just about one manager or one employee. It's about how we view each other, how we treat each other, and how we lead. She clicked the remote in her hand, and the screen changed to a slide titled Our Values, Respect, Fairness, Empathy. The slide showed simple icons, 2 hands shaking, a balanced scale, and a heart. We say we value respect, Simone continued, and we say we value fairness. But words mean little without action. Yesterday showed us that even when we intend to uphold our rules, we can still lose sight of the people behind the policies. A hand shot up in the audience. It was one of the junior analysts, wide-eyed. Simone nodded to her. Yes? The analyst's voice trembled slightly. How can we be sure this won't happen again? That managers won't use policy as an excuse to push people out? Simone held the young woman's gaze. That's a fair question. Going forward, we will implement a more transparent review process for any disciplinary action. No one manager will have the sole authority to make final decisions on personnel actions without a panel review. We will also introduce a peer feedback component so that colleagues can share observations if they see unfair treatment. She clicked to the next slide. Action plan. A bullet list appeared. 1. Revise disciplinary procedures. 2. Anonymous peer feedback. 3. Mandatory bias awareness training. 4. Regular check-ins from HR. 5. Open-door meetings with leadership. These steps are not exhaustive, Simone said. They are the beginning of creating a culture where every voice matters and every person is heard. We will hold ourselves accountable, and we will measure our progress. Simone surveyed the room. Some faces shone with hope, others with relief, and a few with cautious optimism. She knew that words could be empty, but actions could change hearts. She wanted to see that transformation begin today. I ask each of you, she said, to join me in this. Talk to your managers, talk to your teams, and talk to me or anyone in leadership if you see something that doesn't align with our values. Together, we can build a workplace where our policies protect people, not punish them unfairly. When she finished, the applause was louder, sustained. People rose to their feet. She lowered the mic and allowed the applause to wash over her. She felt a quiet pride, not in being rescued by her own company, but in the promise of change her. Words had sparked. After the town hall, small groups formed in corners of the room. Colleagues spoke in hushed tones, some wiping away tears, others leaning in to thank Simone personally. The energy felt different, charged with hope and a shared purpose. Simone stayed through it all, meeting with team leads, answering questions from HR, and listening to stories from employees who had once felt voiceless. Later that afternoon, Simone convened a smaller meeting with Marcus Ellison and the HR panel. Marcus sat at the end of the table, his expression a mix of regret and defensiveness. Simone opened the meeting by thanking him for attending. She laid out the steps for the review process and invited him to share his perspective. Marcus spoke, haltingly, admitting that he had let frustration cloud his judgment. He confessed he had focused too much on policy and not enough on context. Simone listened, then spoke kindly but firmly about the importance of empathy and leadership. She encouraged him to join the upcoming bias awareness workshops and offered to support his return to the team in a coaching capacity, should he wish it. By the end of that meeting, Marcus had agreed to participate fully in the process. Simone felt a sense of relief. She believed in second chances and in growth. She knew he had made a mistake, but she also saw the potential for him to become a better leader for having confronted his own biases. As the day drew to a close, Simone walked through the office one last time. The lights burned bright, and the evening glow cast long shadows across the desks. A few people lingered, finishing tasks or preparing to head home. She paused at her desk, where her plant still stood, leaves gently swaying under the soft overhead light. She placed her palm on the desk and closed her eyes. This office, this team, was her home. And today they had taken a step, small but real, toward a more inclusive, respectful future. She smiled to herself and straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, designing the new policies, leading the training sessions, and keeping the lines of communication open. But tonight, she would let herself feel the quiet joy of standing up for what was right and seeing her team rally behind her. The company had faced a moment of reckoning, and it had chosen integrity over convenience. Simone Carter, in her true role as CEO, felt a wave of hope. Change was possible, one conversation at a time. The morning sun peeked through the blinds as Simone Carter stepped into her office, feeling the gentle warmth on her face. She paused by the large window, looking out over the city streets below, and allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The town hall meeting from the day before still resonated in her mind. The sincere applause, the hopeful faces, the earnest questions. The team had seen her as one of them, and then had learned her true role. Now she was both CEO and collaborator, and the bond between leadership and staff felt stronger than ever. Marcus Ellison arrived soon after, carrying a notebook and wearing a more relaxed expression than Simone had seen in weeks. He knocked lightly on her door and entered when she called him in. The rigid lines of his shoulders had softened. His usual brisk stride seemed measured now. He offered a genuine smile. "Good morning, Simone," he said, voice steady but warm. "I wanted to thank you for giving me the chance to learn from this, and to let you know I'm ready to support the new policies." Simone returned the smile, feeling the sincerity behind his words. They both knew the real work was just beginning. In the days that followed, the human resources team rolled out the revised disciplinary procedures. No single manager could now make final firing decisions without consulting a small review panel, which included representatives from HR, another department, and an employee-elected advocate. When Simone sent the announcement, written in clear, friendly language to every inbox, she included a brief note explaining why the change mattered: to protect people and uphold fairness. She watched the read receipts appear, one by one, and saw replies from team members expressing relief and gratitude. Meanwhile, the anonymous feedback platform went live. Employees could now share observations or concerns about how policies were applied, without fear of reprisal. Simone received the first batch of comments that afternoon, a staff member praising a junior colleague for stepping up during a last-minute deadline, another noting that sometimes a manager's tone could feel abrupt in emails. Simone forwarded these to the relevant supervisors, gently suggesting follow-up conversations and offering coaching resources. Within hours, she began to notice a shift in tone. Emails became warmer, check-ins became more frequent, and people spoke of the new openness in meetings. Simone also scheduled the first round of bias awareness workshops. She booked an external facilitator who led interactive sessions where participants explored scenarios about unconscious assumptions and respectful communication. Marcus attended one of the sessions, eyes attentive, asking thoughtful questions. In a small group exercise, he listened as his peers shared experiences of misunderstanding and miscommunication. Afterward, he approached Simone privately. "I see now how easy it is to let impatience overshadow empathy," he admitted. "I want to keep growing." Simone encouraged him, reminding him that leadership was a journey of learning as much as guiding. As the weeks passed, Simone carved out time each Friday afternoon for open-door huddles in her office. She posted a simple sign outside, "All welcome, every voice matters." Employees trickled in, some just to say hello, others to offer ideas on projects or feedback on the new policies. A graphic designer suggested a monthly culture check survey. A marketer proposed lunch and learn sessions on inclusive language. An accountant asked for clearer guidelines on remote work flexibility. Simone listened to each person, scribbling notes, promising to follow up. The huddles became a beloved ritual, small clusters of chairs, bright smiles, and spirited conversation. One afternoon, as Simone was wrapping up a huddle, she glanced at her watch and noticed Marcus lingering by the door. He held a small potted plant wrapped in simple brown paper. "For you," he said, handing it over. "Thank you for your patience and your leadership. I know I faltered, and I want you to know I'm committed to doing better." Simone accepted the gift, feeling its green leaves brush her palms. She placed it on her desk next to the little succulent her sister had given her months ago. Each plant would now symbolize the team's growth, she thought, rooting deeper and branching wider. In the company newsletter that week, Simone chose to share a personal reflection. She wrote about her experience undercover, the lessons she learned about hidden hierarchies, and the unexpected power of vulnerability. She invited every reader to consider moments when they might unknowingly judge someone by a single misstep. The response flooded in, emails from employees, messages on the internal social network, thank you notes from colleagues in other cities. Many said they felt inspired to be more observant, kinder, and to speak up when they saw unfairness. Simone realized that the story of one wrongful termination had sparked conversations across the entire organization. By the end of the quarter, Simone gathered the executive team to review progress. The metrics showed a marked increase in employee engagement scores, a drop in formal grievances, and higher satisfaction ratings in leadership surveys. Simone presented the data with quiet pride, emphasizing that numbers told only part of the story. She invited 2 employees, a project manager, and a junior analyst to share their experiences on a panel. They spoke of feeling heard for the first time, of managers checking in more genuinely, and of new career opportunities emerging from a culture of trust. The room brimmed with optimism. As evening settled, Simone returned to her office alone. She looked around at the cards on her whiteboard, ideas in her own handwriting, monthly town halls, peer mentoring, flexible work guidelines, continuous feedback loops. She felt a deep contentment, knowing that the steps she and her team took had transformed not only policies but the very atmosphere of the workplace. She exhaled slowly, imagining the years ahead. New challenges, fresh lessons, more moments of growth. Then she shut off her desk light and stepped into the hallway, ready to join the team down for the end-of-week gathering, confident that respect, fairness, and empathy would guide them all forward.